In the sacred halls of the Source Wall, beyond the reach of time and comprehension, the cosmos trembled, not from the rise of a warlord, not from the fury of a red sun, but from the slow, deliberate unraveling of free will itself. A whisper, old as eternity, passed from one realm to another. When the last star forgets its purpose, and choice becomes illusion, the judgment shall awaken. Across the sphere of the gods, realms stirred. The new gods murmured in fear. The old gods vanished in silence, and the abstracts, time, fate, order, and chaos, huddled in anxious debate. A shadow, vast and unending, moved across the multiverse like an infection. True Form Darkseid had returned. Not an avatar, not a physical projection, but the pure, conceptual embodiment of tyranny itself. The one who stood outside the reach of multiverse logic. His presence was no longer tethered to apocalypse or its burning pits. It now loomed above all things, beyond the bleeding edge of existence, leaking anti-life into the fabric of choice and causality. On Earth, zero, chaos erupted. Superheroes faltered, not because they were physically defeated, but because they had lost the will to resist. Batman stood atop Wayne Tower, paralyzed, questioning every decision he'd ever made. Superman hovered above the sun, unable to fly forward. Wonder Woman dropped her sword, unable to define truth. The anti-life equation was no longer a weapon. It was the air they breathed. In the realm of heaven, the thrones and dominions assembled. Blinding wheels of fire, wings of divine flame, and eyes that saw past time all turned toward one trembling figure. The Spectre. Jim Corrigan's face flickered in and out of focus. The form of Crispus Allen emerged next. Then Hal Jordan. None of them stable. The Spectre had no host. For the first time in centuries, he drifted free, raw and untethered, a wandering judgment in search of cause. The darkness is no trial, murmured the Spectre, his voice echoing across galaxies. It denies guilt and truth alike. But you must go, said Zoriel, angel of the host. The balance has tipped. If Darkseid reshapes the will of creation, there will be nothing left to judge. Only silence, only one voice. The Spectre gazed into the distance beyond dimensions and saw it. A great citadel rising not in place, but in conceptual space, carved from broken truths and inverted destinies. A temple built on hopelessness. Darkseid's true form sat upon a throne of extinct stars. In a chamber woven from dead timeline, Darkseid met with no one. He simply was. His thoughts echoed as edicts, and his will shaped unreality. He no longer needed armies. Anti-life had done its work. The Source Wall cracked in his wake. The endless bowed in grief. Even Lucifer Morningstar, watching from the silence at the end of the story, whispered, "This is not my rebellion." The gods of other pantheons began to disintegrate. Odin, Ra, and Izanagi saw their worshippers forget prayer. Zeus stood in Olympus, weeping, his bolt dimming. "The will to believe," he said, "is gone." But one being did not fade. One being grew brighter. Where the anti-life reduced even cosmic gods to echo, Spectre became rage incarnate. No longer a mere agent of heaven. He was now the counterbalance to conceptual death. A blade forged from every injustice ever whispered and every scream ever silenced. He descended into the dark. At the edge of all things, where law and chaos meet the unknown, Spectre arrived. The realm was not darkness. It was absence. Absence of resistance. Absence of color. Absence of desire. The air carried one truth. You are not free. Darkseid rose, not in size, but in meaning. He was no longer bound by dimensions. His form flickered. Sometimes humanoid, sometimes a black hole shaped like a man. His eyes did not glow. They devoured. "You come to judge me." Darkseid's voice vibrated across the fold of concept. "I come because judgment is the last act of freedom," the Spectre responded, his voice thunder and tears. Darkseid did not attack. He simply willed, and entire realities fell silent. Not destroyed, just unwritten. Choice erased. Alternatives forbidden. A woman who might have become a hero was never born. A planet that could have sparked rebellion chose submission in their collective soul. And yet, the Spectre burned brighter. He took form, 10,000 wings of fire, the faith of every judge, the cry of every oppressed soul who died without justice. Darkseid, you are the end of all that breathes with thought. I am what comes before that end, the voice that says, you are wrong. Darkseid finally turned his full gaze upon him. There is no wrong, there is only Darkseid. The first blow was not physical, it was philosophical. Darkseid cast a weight of the anti-life equation at the Spectre, pouring entropy, submission, and nihilism directly into his divine essence. Spectre staggered, seeing visions of every failure in history, genocides unpunished, corrupt judges, martyrs forgotten, but instead of collapsing, he screamed. And with that scream, entire layers of heaven shook. Spectre's hand reached out and gripped the law itself. Not human law, but cosmic law, the kind that binds gods to consequence. The kind that says even Darkseid must be held accountable. Chains of divine fire lashed out, wrapping around the concepts of tyranny, control, and domination. And for the first time since his return, Darkseid paused. You would dare bind me? He said, not in anger, but in cold disbelief. I do not bind you, Spectre replied. I bind what you stand for. And then, the throne will shatter. The war had begun. The void between dimensions quivered, not from the Spectre's wrath, but from the profound silence of true annihilation. The Spectre's fiery chains of divine justice clashed against True Form Darkseid's immeasurable will, but each strike was met with the unyielding weight of inevitability. Darkseid stood unshaken, with presence bending the very concept of reality around him. The Spectre, embodiment of divine vengeance, could feel the oppressive pressure in the air, crushing truth that the will of a singular god could bend the multiverse to his whims. The Anti-Life Equation, an ancient force that stripped all existence of its meaning, pulsed within Darkseid's heart. It was more than just a weapon. It was the weapon. Every flicker of his immense power distorted the fabric of time and space, unraveling the very concept of free will itself. This is the end of choice, Darkseid intoned, his voice like the rumbling of galaxies collapsing. His eyes burned with the force of the equation, pouring darkness into the Spectre's very essence. Spectre felt it. The first wave of the Anti-Life Equation. His divine form began to flicker like a candle in a storm. His thoughts became muddled, distorted. You cannot erase me, Darkseid. The Spectre roared, conjuring waves of divine fire to shield himself, but the Anti-Life surged to his defenses. Each pulse of Darkseid's power eroded his form, pulling him deeper into a void of despair. For the first time in centuries, Spectre doubted. The Spectre, who had judged the greatest cosmic entities, now faced something beyond his comprehension. The obliteration of free will itself. It was not mere destruction. It was the undoing of meaning, a concept beyond judgment. And Darkseid fed on that despair. With a wave of his hand, Darkseid's power shattered the barriers of the multiverse. Worlds were devoured, forgotten, time bent, and looped unnaturally. The Spectre struggled to maintain his form, but each second brought a deeper erosion of his existence. Darkseid stood before him, his eyes cold, glowing with the black light of absolute control. This is your fate, Spectre. No matter how much you fight, no matter how many laws you enforce, nothing escapes my will. The source wall trembles before me, and the gods of your universe have already forgotten your name. Darkseid raised his hand once more, and the Anti-Life Equation enveloped the Spectre. The divine flames that had once been his essence began to flicker out, replaced by a growing darkness. His mind shattered under the weight of cosmic despair. But the Spectre did not fall. He did not cease to exist. He fought on, a flicker of resistance in the face of inevitability. A final, desperate effort. In his final act of defiance, the Spectre surged forward, his cosmic form blazing brighter than ever, and attempted to bind Darkseid with divine judgment. The chains of fire, forged in the very will of the gods, sought to encircle Darkseid's essence, to bind him in the core of eternity. But Darkseid merely smiled, and the Anti-Life Equation burned through the Spectre's chains. There was no mercy in Darkseid's eyes, only the cold, inevitable truth of absolute dominion. You cannot bind me, Darkseid whispered, his voice dripping with the weight of eons. You were always a prisoner to your sense of justice. But now, you will know what it means to truly lose yourself. With a flick of his wrist, the anti-life equation consumed the Spectre, reducing the divine avatar of vengeance to a mere shadow of his former self. The light of judgment flickered. The last spark of defiance was snuffed out, as the Spectre was reduced to nothingness, his power collapsing on itself, as though the universe itself had forgotten he ever existed. His mind, once a beacon of cosmic law, was stripped away, rendered null. He was no longer a being of vengeance. He was a whisper, a shadow of divine intent, the once glorious Spectre, who stood against gods and monsters alike, now lay defeated at Darkseid's feet. Darkseid surveyed the broken form of the Spectre, his voice low, echoing across the expanse of collapsing realities. You were never meant to fight me, Spectre. I am not your enemy. I am your end. With a final, crushing pulse of the anti-life equation, the multiverse itself trembled. Darkseid's form expanded, swallowing galaxies and timelines. As he fully embraced his true form, justice was undone. As the Spectre was reduced to nothingness, his power collapsed on itself, as though the universe itself had forgotten he ever existed. His mind, once a beacon of cosmic law, was stripped away, rendered null. He was no longer a being of vengeance. He was a whisper, a shadow of divine intent, the once glorious Spectre, who stood against gods and monsters alike, now lay defeated at Darkseid's feet. Darkseid surveyed the broken form of the Spectre, his voice low, echoing across the expanse of collapsing realities. You were never meant to fight me, Spectre. I am not your enemy. I am your end. With a final, crushing pulse of the anti-life equation, the multiverse itself trembled. Darkseid's form expanded, swallowing galaxies and timelines. As he fully embraced his true form, justice was undone.